Building downtown. Building downtown.
Hey, this is the Building Downtown. Switching gears up a bit from the recent shows we've been doing. Heavy on the battle rap, heavy on the KOTD Grand Prix series. Going to be talking some UFC today with a friend of mine, a friend of Amy's, and in the future, hopefully a friend of Kirill's, someone we know real well. Don't forget to follow the show at The Building DT on Instagram and on Twitter. Follow and subscribe on YouTube, iTunes, Spotify, Google Play, TalkShoe, wherever you get your podcasts. I'm your host, Jason Kelly. Follow me at jkelly MMA. Joined as usual, by Kirill Kasatskiy and Amy Barton. You can follow them, Kirill at Apostle Raps, Amy at Ames Bell, and we have a guest with us tonight from my old RNC days, my co-host. He's even been on here a couple times. Actually, he was on here. Anyone from the 2000s, early 2010s MMA media era will probably be very familiar with him. The show we did on here, I think it was the Building Downtown 13. We talked a lot about that, so you might be interested in that. And he's back to join us again. He is the host of Diamond Diehards, which you can find at Diamond Diehards on Instagram and Twitter, and still the host of RNC Radio, where I'll pop in with him every now and then, which you can find at RNC Radio. So, Joe Rizzo, how are you?
Good. Of course, nobody's going to know me if you pronounce my last name like a Brazilian. But
did you just say Rizzo? It was one of the greatest times ever in MMA Diehards Radio. Kevin Randleman, fucking Daniel, came through the fucking speakers right at the start through the headset looking for you because he was thinking Pedro Rizzo's cousin.
Well, Hizzo then. If it's Pedro, then it's Hizzo. If it's Joe, then it's Rizzo. And if it's the Building Downtown, it's like H to the Izzo.
Oh, Joe is on fucking point tonight. Yes, yes. So you've been busy with Diamond Diehards, doing a ton of baseball coverage. You guys have been very active over there. We'll get into that in a little bit. But first, some UFC stuff going on. How much of an eye are you still keeping on UFC now that you're not doing RNC Radio fucking 6 days a week?
I still keep up with it. It's just not a religious experience and you know, so much work as it is more just like, you know, I mean, I can't, anytime I follow a sport, I'm not following it like a layman, you know, I'm kind of like looking for stuff that's a little more, I don't even want to say inside. I'm kind of more analytical about things. So when I'm looking at UFCs, you know, even if I don't catch it, like this weekend I was out the entire night. I was, well, actually, it's kind of a funny story. I'm going to pat myself on the back. If it's presented, you know, I'll tell the story about what I was doing Saturday night. It was, needless to say, it was something really, really good that's going to take years off my purgatory time if you believe in that sort of thing. So I didn't get to see the Covington versus Woodley card. I got back just probably after it was over, and I saw, you know, the post-game shit, and, you know, I was keeping up with all that, and I went back and, you know, I looked at results, and I looked at, you know, some key parts of, you know, a lot of like finishes and stuff like that, and it looks like I kind of missed like a really good card, but yeah, it's like anything that I'm keeping up with, like I can't help but keep up with it with like my old sort of, you know, verve and vigor that I've always had for sports. You know, if I'm following hockey and, you know, I'm watching the Stanley Cup Finals, I'm into it. You know, like I'm like, oh, how many shots did they get? Who's playing well? You know, what's the keys to winning? If it's, you know, the NBA stuff going on, I'm you know, who's blowing leads in the third quarter? Why are they doing it? If it's baseball, I'm crazy into baseball. The baseball's been unbelievable. And, you know, I'm into that in depth, like who's playing well, who's the key to what. And if it's MMA, I'm looking at, you know, okay, where does this leave Colby Covington? You know, where is he in terms of his hype game? You know, like is it actually going over, or are people like not buying it? Do they think he's for real as a hype man, or, you know, are they so obsessed with like every word that's coming out of his mouth that they don't realize that it's, you know, just a shtick, and who knows if he's serious or not serious, and who cares, because it doesn't really, you know, matter like any of that stuff when you get inside the octagon and somebody's trying to take your hat off, right? So yeah, from that standpoint, I'm always going to be into it like that. And if I'm not, you know, go hit me with a prod and pull me away from the KOTD Grand Prix series that's then taking up my interest, right?
Yeah, I'm kind of with you there. I'm definitely not now that we're not doing the show into it as much as I was, but like Saturday night I caught the whole main card. For the bigger events, I wish I would have caught the prelims though. Well, I guess I wish I did, and I'm glad I didn't because TJ Laramie he lost actually 52 seconds into the first round. He got submitted, and that sucks. But obviously, I don't think he's going to be cut or anything. Dana was really happy with him out of the Contender Series, first UFC fight, but that's a little shitty. But yeah, I'm basically main card at top of the card, and some events I don't even fucking tune into anymore. But the Covington-Woodley fight was really good. Covington put a beating on Woodley like I've never seen.
The whole time too.
Yeah, no shit. Yeah, Krill and I watched the card together, and friggin', yeah. I mean, he was just on him like a fucking wet blanket, and I've never seen Woodley busted up like that. A couple of the punches, you could see blood spray from new fucking things opening up on his face. It was fucking brutal, the beating Colby put on him. So yes, you didn't check out any of the fights, you see any of the highlights or anything, Joe?
No, I did. I went back. Yeah.
Oh, you did go back?
Yeah. I went back and I did my stuff on it for sure. I was, when I got home at 1:00 Saturday morning into Saturday night into Sunday morning, I was already looking at stuff and seeing who won and how they won. Looking at the post-fight interviews and stuff like that. It was yeah.
Did you see the draw?
Yeah, that was. I mean, I didn't go back and watch the whole fight.
Yeah.
But
you did see that.
So there was a moment after, right, between Donald Cerrone and Nico Price that man, it really could have been a great moment, and there was just something missing from it. It was like. It was like everything was right there. The two fighters were emotional. Nico Price was listening to Donald Cerrone talk about how he just wants to go back and see his kids. And Nico Price is like, I got 5 kids and I just want to go see them. And I'm so honored to have been in the cage with Cerrone. And there was just, I don't know, there was something just middling in there that kind of like made it, that's like a moment that you hope for. And there was just something awkward about it. You know what I mean? I couldn't put my finger on.
Well, Nico Price, when they announced the majority decision, Nico Price threw his arms up and went, yeah. And Donald Cerrone looked at him like, what the fuck are you celebrating? Donald Cerrone has never, ever, ever went to a draw. 36-15 is his fucking UFC record.
Yeah, I mean, draws are hard. I mean, they're, that's why if you're ever betting on a draw, if you actually hit one, you could probably win 1 out of 20 bets that a fight's going to go to a draw, and if you actually hit one, you'll end up making money on the thing.
Yeah, but to have over 50 MMA fights and not one draw, that's rare. Wouldn't you say?
I don't know. I mean, I guess I would have to really look at all the results of MMA fights or UFC fights or whatever, and see what percentage of them have been draws, right? And then if it's more than 2%, then yeah, I guess it would be rare that he had his first draw in like 51 fights, right? Because that would be in 2%.
Gerald there has 45 fights too. He ain't got no draw.
Right. So, but I mean,
good point.
Let's say 1% of UFC fights go to a draw, right? That means you'd have to fight 100 times, before you'd be likely to be before statistically you'd be due for a draw, right? Like, or you 99 before you'd statistically be due for a draw, or if maybe he could fight 50 more times and not get a draw, in which case he would draw 1% of the time. So I don't know. I don't really know what the numbers are. Like, I don't know how many draws there are, but that would be how I would determine myself, whether it was like a rare thing or whatever. I mean, how many guys have or women have more than one draw? How about that? Look at that. Tell me what you see. I mean, do you see people in there? I mean, you see people with no contest. You see people with draws, but those are not the same things. They go after wins and losses on your record, but you don't often see those things be more than like a 1 or a 2 at the end of somebody's record, right?
Yeah. So. Yeah, I guess the Covington Woodley thing, all the shit afterwards. Colby Covington just tried to create some sort of an image. I don't really know where he's going with it, because it's just kind of seemed to lose its way over the past 12 months or so. But yeah, so he's the Trump guy. Trump called him in the post-fight interview. Obviously, that's going to bring a fucking whole fleet of hate from certain areas. Tyron Woodley's black. Tyron Woodley answered every question at the post fight press conference with Black Lives Matter. Now that this shit it's tied to sports, do you think that's a good thing or a bad thing that this shit's being brought into sports? Because we're seeing it in the NBA, we're seeing it. Well, we saw it in the NFL for a while now. I don't know what they're doing in baseball or hockey, but NBA heavy, and now this shit in MMA.
I don't think it's a new thing at all. I mean, I think
not new. I mean, look at Muhammad Ali, right?
Yeah,
But I mean, it's
look,
heavy in your face these days.
Well, I mean, you don't even listen. You could go back to the beginning of time practically, and it's been tied in there, right? I mean, go back to you guys, Amy's American, but you guys, the quote unquote men on this show are not. And one of our greatest American athletes ever was a guy named Jesse Owens, who was, African American, and in the 36 Olympics, Hitler didn't even want him to be in the Olympics, and not only did he go to the Olympics, and not only did he win gold medals, he set world records, and Hitler had to stand for him basically. So there's, I mean, this goes back a long way. Look, why should athletes be different than any other citizen? Right? Like if they have a voice and they want to stand up and say something, in the US, they're free to say it. I mean, you have freedom of speech. If you're a fan, you have freedom to not listen, not like, not attend, not root for that person. You could disagree with them at your peril. And that's it. So if people don't like that, NFL players or players in, the NBA or whatever don't stand for the national anthem, or they don't come out of their locker rooms, and they feel to them personally that they're disrespecting the flag and what it stands for and stuff like that, they have a right to feel that way, and they have a right to think that way. And if you want to kneel and use your job and your platform to make a statement, as long as you're a good player, right? I mean, essentially what it comes down to is owners want to win, so they'll tolerate it if you're good. And if you're not, and you're causing a stir, and they have a chance to cut you, and you disagree with it, then it's employment at will. I mean, if you walked into a job in an office somewhere, I mean, I know that sounds like the most 2019 thing ever, because God, who would go to a job in an office these days? But if you did that, if you did stuff like that within an office, right? Like, or if you made some kind of statement like that wasn't approved by your company, your HR would be up your ass.
Yeah.
I mean, if you had a Trump mug or something like Colby Covington might bring to an office, right, or a MAGA hat, like if he tried to wear his MAGA hat on his 9 to 5 in the office, he'd be in trouble with HR, right? I mean, if probably if you wore a Biden hat, you might be too, but there will be people that just don't like it. So it's a free speech issue. And, listen, if you have a platform, there's a lot of athletes. Let's face it, the majority of athletes don't actually use the platform to make the statement. They don't. It's just a very, very, very small percent. The percentage of athletes that use it, I guess, is probably about the same as the percentage of draws in the UFC. That's probably it, right? It's a low percent. It's a low percent, but I'm tying the idea together there, right? You get it. It's a low percentage that are doing it, and people want to get up in arms about it. It's a low percentage of people that are complaining about it. It's just that the ones that do it are doing it loudly, and the ones that complain about it are doing it loudly, and everybody else is kind of stuck in the middle or keeping their opinions to themselves or whatever, right? I mean, so it's not going to end. If it does end, that's probably bad, because it means we're not living in a free country with free speech. And the people are the ones that are going to make up the decision making on if they'll tolerate that sort of thing from their players. And so far, I mean, I guess the biggest debate you could make is Colin Kaepernick. Did he get blackballed? Did he not get a job because of that? Maybe, probably not. His interest in football seemed to wane about the time that his statement got noticed. I mean, he was already, gone from being a quarterback that was in the Super Bowl to a guy who was benched for a guy who sucks, honestly. Like, maybe he's still in the league, maybe he's not, I don't know. And he felt like his social platform issue stuff was more important probably than football. So it's hard to say. I mean, look, if Tom Brady made the same statements as Colin Kaepernick, you think Tom Brady would have not had a job? No,
Yeah, no
Tom
shit. I
Brady
don't follow football, but I know Tom Brady.
That's the point, right?
Yeah.
You know who Tom Brady is. If Tom Brady made the same statements and did the same shit as Kaepernick, he'd have a job, right?
Yeah.
Because why? In the end, the owners, they want to win, and they'll put up with it, from somebody who's going to help them win. And in MMA, it's a little different because you have a guy like Covington, who's clear. He was a good fighter, and he was a humdrum guy with no shtick. And a few years ago, he saw this angle, and he took it, and he's run with it. So I mean, the details of it are that it's Trump and it's polarizing just to a large degree, and it gets people having an opinion about him one way or another. Before, nobody had an opinion about him one way or another. So if you just cut through all the bullshit and you look at him as a fighter, the guy's really fucking good.
Yeah, he is.
And if you do, if you're caught up in the other stuff and you don't want to root for him, then don't root for him. And if rooting for that sort of thing is your thing, then go root for him, because he's probably gonna get another shot at Usman for the title.
Yeah, more than likely. Amy, I heard you clearing your throat. Were you trying to say something?
No, I was trying to breathe. I mean, I can say something, but I was merely breathing.
Well, go ahead while you're breathing. Speak while you can.
No, I heard that. No, I was going to say kind of what Joe just started getting into with Colby, is that, on the one hand, you have a platform, and a lot of them don't use it. Some of them do. And I agree with all of that. I don't think that's what Colby is doing. That's the difference with Colby. Colby, I don't think is trying to make a real point. I think Colby is trying to Chael harder than Chael ever hearted. And I think that he just picked this topic because it's the hot topic right at the moment, and he knows it's going to get him the most attention. And so I don't think those things are related at all, taking a stand or having a statement or having a platform and what Colby does. I don't think they're even related. But on a side note, to go back to where your question started, I do want to point out that I think it's interesting how you're talking about Muhammad Ali, and you guys are all back in the history of our sports and everything. Not only that, but if you take something that's not Trump, right, and it's breast cancer awareness and we're wearing pink socks, or it's veterans awareness, or it's a cop thing and we're wearing flags, or it's an army thing. These things happen month over month over month, especially in the NFL. And literally, not only do people not complain about it, people support it. So, it's just the issue. It's not the issue that people are using a platform to support something. It's they take issue with what the actual issue is, not that the platform is being used. So I think that's the big difference in what you're talking about with Trump and Black Lives Matter and all that. I don't think using your platform is that big a deal. Otherwise, they wouldn't allow any of the awareness months or socks or emblems or stickers on the helmet or whatever. But they do, and they always have.
That's true. I never even thought about it the other way, where like the non-controversial way, like breast cancer awareness month, shit like that.
Yeah, so I mean, that's where it's an issues issue. It's not a platform issue, in my opinion.
There's got to be a responsibility to it, right? You can't have next one come out with a swastika on it or something.
Yeah,
like
no.
that.
There's actually been people in the UFC and in Strikeforce who have had racist.
It will divide the fans too, right? A
that
lot.
got fired.
And it might push a lot of people to have opinions they don't necessarily have to, right? That's what I don't like about it.
Yeah. I wonder what they would do. Joe, you might know if this is true or not. You remember that sleeve Allen Iverson wore on his forearm all the time? I heard or read before that that's because he had gang tattoos on his forearm. Do you know if there's any truth to that? So
when Allen Iverson first blew up the NBA, and he did, man, when he came in, he was, the first guy that was so outwardly tatted that the league sort of they hurtled back in fear of like, oh my God, this guy does not look like the other guys that are out on the floor here. Like this guy looks like something different that, our fans are going to be afraid of. Our big fan bases are going to be like, no, I don't like this guy, you know, whatever. So, and listen, you know, there was no skirting the issue. I mean, there just weren't a lot of guys at that point that had, you know, sleeve tattoos, or if their tattoos were there, they just weren't very visible. And it wasn't something that was, you know, frowned upon. It was something that wasn't even there to be frowned upon. Like they hadn't seen it yet. So the idea was that, you know, they figured if they could get his tats, you know, de-emphasized or covered up or whatever, that it was gonna, you know, not make him, well, let's use it again, the polarizing figure, right? So I don't really know if the sleeve, the physical sleeve, not the sleeve tattoo, the physical sleeve that covered the tattoos on the arm were done for that exact reason. Mm-hmm. I'm trying to remember if he wore it at Georgetown, and I think that he did. So I don't know if it would have been, you know, he could have faced the same pressure at Georgetown too, for all we know. But you know, that would be, I mean, listen, get him on the show. I'll come on that show and I'll be glad to ask him the question.
You covered NBA for seasons. You get him on my show.
Yeah, I don't. I'm trying to think if I ever had Iverson. You know, it's look, there's probably, you know, 10 stories out there that, you know, and Amy will find them. That would say, yeah, it was bursitis, right? But I feel like he wore it he might have even had it in high school. He was a high school quarterback, believe it. I had a
Allen Iverson football jersey when I was younger.
He was a great football player. There's a lot of people. There was him and Ronald Curry, who was another guy who played football and basketball. They were both point guards. They were both quarterbacks. Ronald Curry went to North Carolina. Allen Iverson went to Georgetown, and they both were guys that, you know, everybody will tell you who saw them. Excuse me. Everybody who saw them will tell you that, like, either guy could have been better at football than they were even at basketball.
Holy shit.
Iverson was a freak. I mean, my thing with Iverson was, and I know we're kind of getting off topic here because you're talking about the sleeve tattoo, but I remember just thinking, like, you know what? If Allen Iverson had decided that soccer was his sport, he would have been the center forward on the U.S. national soccer team. Who was going to stop him? I mean, if he was a soccer player, he'd be Lionel Messi, but like 5 inches taller. Like, who was going to stop that guy? Like, it didn't matter what sport he played. He was going to be great at it. Like, that guy was a generational athlete, a complete freak. And, you know, he didn't just have the physical assets. He had the mental capacity that he was just an absolute winner, absolute dedicated, and just his like sporting IQ was just through the roof. I mean, every field the guy was on, every court the guy was on, he was the smartest guy on the court.
Yeah, he's one of my favorite basketball players of all time. Top 5 for sure for me.
So was it the sleeve, you know, the bursitis and the sleeve, you know, covering tattoos? Ask him. I don't know. He might say yes. He might say he thought it was. David Stern, who was the commissioner then, has passed away at the beginning of this year, or the end of last year, and he's not around to answer those questions. But I could tell you that for sure, the ownership and the commissioner's office was, you know, the tattoos were a concern. They were afraid that it would really turn off the white fan base. And what it did do, in my opinion, was it helped grow the black fan base like more back then. Yeah. I believe because he's a guy that was, you know, like accepted. You know what I mean? Like he spoke different than guys in the past. That he looked different than guys in the past. That his cornrows were a big deal.
Yeah, I remember that.
Because
I remember that, and the way he used to dress and shit too.
Yeah,
they brought in that whole thing of dress code before the games. You got to wear suits and you got to dress professional, and He had a rap album the NBA wouldn't allow him to release. So the crossover into the black community was huge.
Right, because he also became, the symbol of it. And, a lot of times he didn't help himself, but, he was also made to look like a much worse guy than he really was. Let's face it.
Yeah.
He was a little aloof, that maybe didn't help him. But in his aloofness and the way that he spoke, he was really trying to calculate more of what he was speaking. And he wouldn't just say things like, I don't think he said shit that he didn't mean.
No.
I don't think that he did. And of course, his rant about you talking about practice
awesome.
Is one of the best ever. There's even a horse called that, by the way. And every time it comes up, I got to pump my friend Dwayne Morris's tires. Be like, come on, man, you got to get in on this horse right now. And of course, like the time I missed him, he fucking won, and I missed that payday. But what are you gonna do?
I digress. You digress. We digress. Somebody digresses. Back to MMA. Kirill's cousin won in 17 seconds on the weekend.
Shit.
Kazmet Chimaev. How do you say that, Kirill?
Chimaev.
Chimaev. No problem whatsoever.
Or Chimaev. I don't know. It depends. I need to hear it. I will repeat it. I don't know what they did that with a CH.
That kid's on a fucking roll, though. He's came in the UFC like fucking 2 months ago. He already has 3 wins. 3 finishes, too. A knockout, a TKO, and a submission.
No, the more important thing is he's getting shutouts, which are impossible in MMA. He's winning without being touched.
I know. He's good. He's good.
He killed this one pretty quick, huh?
Yeah, Johnny Walker seems to be back. He fucking dismantled Ryan Spann in the first round. And the chick from Arizona that speaks Portuguese with a Brazilian accent won.
Oh, she was dominant. She was dominant.
Yeah.
What was Ronda Marcos doing? Like she
getting her ass kicked.
Oh my god! But like that was, I mean, I know she's supposed to be a wrestler, but that was not a good game plan at all. Like, and Dern. So Mackenzie Dern is who you're talking about, and she's looking better and better with each of these fights here. Strawweight, Ronda Marcos. She's Canadian, right? She's a veteran. She's been in that octagon a lot of times, but she was like overmatched pretty quickly. But even from from a game plan standpoint, I just didn't like the way that she went about that fight. And Mackenzie Dern was she was holding this arm bar, like it was just it was just.
It would look disgusting.
It was horrible to watch because you're like, okay.
I looked away a couple times, man. I was just like, I do not want to see that shit.
Yeah, it's like, is this okay? This looks like a tap or snap thing that's gonna happen right here, right? Like the old
girl was looking away, and I was yelling, "Break it, break it, break it!"
I just don't like to see bones pop, man. I've seen enough.
Well, yeah,
But anyways, yeah. What about
not watching and you won't see any.
I was because it looked like she was supposed to tap a few times there. You know what I mean? She just kept twitching and twitching. It's like, let it go, man. You're not getting out. You know what I mean? You're just gonna hurt yourself. Just tap out.
When she lost a leg between, the left leg between. She was holding. So Dern was isolating Marcos's left arm, and Dern needed to get her, and her right leg was over, like behind the back of the neck, and the left leg Marcos was able to hold out because she held Dern's left leg between her own legs, and as soon as it slipped out, that's like there was a tap, boom, 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 boom.
Oh yeah,
and you were just waiting. You're like, oh my god, if that thing gets loose, like Dern could have stayed there for 5 hours like that,
Yep.
Eventually, once she slipped it out, it was an immediate tap. And I have nothing against Johnny Walker, but as he pummeled Ryan Spann there, but like every time he loses, you could say, "Oh, I wonder if Johnny Walker blew it."
Yeah,
it's a Johnny Walker blue.
Oh, Joe.
At least Amy gets it.
Joe. Yeah. Okay, that was a long time. No, we're what, like almost 40 minutes in. Good on you, Joe.
Good on you, Joe. It only took 40 minutes. Moving on to this weekend, UFC 253.
It's gonna be insane.
Yes, it's going to be nuts. Israel Adesanya versus Paulo Costa. Dominick Reyes versus Jan Błachowicz. The 2 title fights, Adesanya versus Costa is middleweight fight, and Reyes versus Błachowicz for the vacant light heavyweight. Fucking Israel versus Paulo Costa. I can't wait for that. I saw the stat the other day. I forgot what it was though, but it has been a long time since the challenger and the champion were both undefeated.
Crazy.
Yeah, this is gonna be a fucking good one. Is this up to Amy's standards? Will she be watching this one?
You gotta watch this one.
Or is this too late for you?
Everything is too late for me, but in news just handed to me, they're still giving Diego Sanchez fights, so I might watch a few. I don't know.
What is he these days? The Dreaming Nightmare? The Nightmare of Dreams?
Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah. This guy keeps changing his name from the Dream to the Nightmare.
Well,
but yeah, Adesanya, Paulo Costa, Rizzo. What you thinking?
Well, you know what? I mean, you got Fight Island back in the mix here, right? So that's the first thing. We got to make sure everybody gets through their little quarantine period. I saw people starting to land, and John Anik was the great UFC play-by-play announcer, was talking about the beginning of his quarantine here, and trying to exercise out some of the jet lag and stuff like that. I'm going off the board here. I'm going to give you a curveball. Sijara Eubanks just fought on September 12th, and she's on this card, and she's had to go across the pond. So Ketlin Vieira is her opponent, and she was actually supposed to fight Marion Renault, but Renault pulled out for some reason. I don't know what it was. It was last week, and then Eubanks got the spot. Of all the girls at the bantamweight, that she was just ready to go. I mean, that's a huge opportunity, right? That's a great storyline. That's kind of on the main card here. She was just on the Vegas card, the Karate Hottie versus Angela Hill card. She beat Julia Vilia, and she went to a decision. So she fought 15 minutes, right? And she's going to be fighting again in a 2-week period with a cross country fight. She's she's from my area, the New York City area, and so she had to come back across from out to Vegas back, and now she's got to go over to Fight Island, right? I mean, in 2 weeks. I know she goes to a decision every time. She has 8 straight or whatever. And winning a little bit more than she's losing. So I guess the gas tank's not going to be a problem. But I mean, that's a hell of a thing right there. Let's not lose sight of what she's doing. But yeah, these 2 title fights. I mean, we're going to see somebody hold the belt at light heavyweight that is not Jon Jones or Daniel Cormier here.
Yep.
I mean, that's the dawn of a new era forget about the division in how about in the UFC and how about in MMA?
Now, here's the thing though. Remember when Chuck lost the belt and that thing just got passed around like a cheap whore? Nobody defended it. They just win, lose, win, lose, win, lose. I wouldn't be surprised if we see a bit of that after this. Because who's far and above everyone else in light heavyweight division? Nobody. I think there's just a group of them at the top that are probably going to pass that slut around for a bit.
Well, the funny thing is, if this is a close fight, the thing you're going to see is an immediate rematch. If it's a
fucking
good,
who else?
Right. If it's a good close fight, this just reeks of immediate rematch, right?
Yeah. And if Johnny Walker wins his next one and this isn't a close fight, he'll probably get the next title shot.
Yeah, I agree with that. That's a good call out. That's a good call out. The undercard here is a little bit light, right? I mean, yes, Diego, yes, and Jake Matthews, but there's our old buddy, my former RNC radio host Jeremy Fullerton would say, Jay, that the undercard is loaded with people who don't have Wikipedia pages. The only fight on the undercard where both guys have a Wikipedia page is the Diego Sanchez Jake Matthews fight. Yeah, so you can't, you're digging a little bit deep there, but it's a top heavy card, and they're back on Fight Island. The Fight Island cards are really good.
Yeah, they have been.
You know, and those fighters and the staff and the crew and everybody else, the annex, you know, they have to make the adjustment because this stuff is happening there, like in the middle of the night to go prime time for, you know, East Coast time, basically Eastern time, and you know, through Pacific here in North America, right? So very interesting. I mean, I think Costa's going to have a lot of trouble winning that fight. I know, you know, I mean, I would like to look at the betting line. I didn't look at it. I imagine
I got it up here. It's
Adesanya's probably minus 200 or something.
Minus 175, Paulo Costa plus 150.
Yeah, I think Adesanya could be. I think it's just a hard matchup for Costa. I mean, he's a hard matchup for a lot of guys, but you know, or pretty much everybody. But yeah. I don't know. I don't see him losing the belt there. The other fight, I don't know. I think Błachowicz. I suspect
he's 225.
I suspect he's a pretty solid underdog, but I think he's live.
Plus 225.
I think he might be live. So if I was going to look at one of the underdogs in either of those fights, I would actually say Błachowicz, who's a little, you know, he's more of an underdog than Costa. So yeah, I mean, and I think both fights should be pretty good. Like, I wouldn't be surprised at all, like I said, if that fight was, you know, 48-47 twice and 47-48 the other way, and they had to go and do it again.
This is it. Oh, go ahead. Sorry.
I think Adesanya, I think he could get a finish in that fight.
I think somebody's getting finished in that fight. I'm leaning towards Adesanya, but I will not be surprised if Paulo Costa knocks Adesanya out.
He's just hard to hit.
Very.
It's hard to hit, and that's the thing. If you're a Costa, like, you're gonna get frustrated. You're gonna, you know, if he starts to load up, then forget it. Like, he's got that. As soon as he starts to load up, that's when Adesanya is gonna come in and take his soul. I mean, that's what it is. Like, look, or well, like what happened in the Yoel Romero fight, right? Like, Yoel loaded up, and Adesanya was like, okay, keep loading up. I mean, as soon as you load up, you're not gonna hit me. And he wrote out the decision, right? Yep. Look what he did against Robert Whittaker when, you know, Whittaker was having trouble hitting him. He loaded up, boom, and the fight was over, right?
Yeah, he fucked Whittaker up bad.
Yeah, he messed him up. And Whittaker's great. You know, Jay. I love him.
Oh, yeah.
I love him. Even Anderson Silva, you know, he played around with him. Like, you see, like, Gastelum, he just,
that was a great fight.
Yeah, he you know, he kind of ran circles around him, right? So he's just hard to hit. And a guy like Costa, I mean, listen, he's great. You're right. I mean, listen, if Costa knocked him out, would that be a huge surprise? No. Not a huge surprise at all. I mean, like you said, he's not much, you know, he's a slight underdog. He's not much of an underdog.
Yeah.
But, you know, he's I guess, you know, maybe you could look at the common opponent in Romero, you know, being the most, you know, the most recent opponent for both, right?
Yep.
And both, you know, going to a decision against him. But they got there in very, very different ways. Right?
Very different ways.
Yeah. So, but like, you're thinking, so the case for Costa, right, would be the way he knocked out Uriah Hall, right? Because Hall could be shifty and explosive. And, you know, on the right night, he's hard to hit, and every time you miss him, you're going to pay. Yep. But I don't know if UFC 226, you know, over 2 years ago already was that night. But, you know, he knocked out Uriah Hall, right? He knocked him out. So if you're looking at that, yeah. But, like, just looking at the guys that Adesanya's faced versus the guys that Costa has faced, like, you can't even compare it. Like, Adesanya's really faced, you know, just a significantly higher level of opponent, and he figures out how to neutralize the opponent's strength, which to me first is the sign of a great champion. Like, how is this guy going to beat me? How can this guy win the fight? Okay, that's the number one way. We're taking that away. That's George St. Pierre logic, right? That's why George St. Pierre didn't lose a round for like 4 years. Like,
Yeah.
he just would, and he's boring. He doesn't finish anybody. Okay, he just takes away all your ammunition, and now how are you going to beat him? Right? You're not. That's the thing.
Yep.
So I think he has a way. You're facing a guy who's a knockout artist, but your biggest strength is that you're really, really hard to hit. Well, look how that went for Floyd Mayweather, right? And boxing. I know it's boxing and not MMA, but they're first cousins. It's the more I think about it, I mean, I'm surprised Adesanya. Like I said, I would expected him to be in the minus 200 range at least. I wouldn't be surprised if the money pushes toward him later. But I again, Costa's really good. I wouldn't be that surprised if he won, but I would be surprised. I think I'm squarely in Adesanya's corner here. Squarely.
Adesanya definitely seems to be more experienced. He's got like 80 kickboxing fights.
Yeah.
He's been around, you know what I mean?
Fuck yeah. Oh, definitely he's more experienced. And a way better striker. Way better striker. But sometimes somebody gets inside that strike. I mean, look at Chris Weidman and Anderson Silva. All right, okay, but I don't expect Adesanya to go in there goofing around. But I hate too when people say, "Oh, Anderson goofed around. Look what happened. Weidman caught him." It's not just that he was goofing around. Weidman was the guy that was planned to beat Anderson before Weidman was even in the goddamn UFC. Like that was the guy. You know what I mean? I'm not saying Costa's the guy, but his athleticism, his power. If he touches him, I think it can cause problems. But like you said, Joe, touch him first. First, you got to hit him clean. And that's a fucking task.
I don't now, Jay, you know this, but and Amy, you might know this, but I had a very, very, very strong opinion on that Anderson Silva Chris Weidman fight, and I don't think it applies here. I mean, I can understand why you would say that, but I'll explain why I don't agree that it's a good comparison. I think what happened with Anderson Silva in that fight was he fought a certain way, pretty similar to the way Adesanya fights, right? Mm-hmm. Very, very, very difficult to hit. And even if you hit him, he turns, what looks like a solid strike into a glance, right? He gets out of the way. But he was getting to an advanced age. And at one of those points for these fighters, it's, you've heard the expression, it's a game of inches. Well, it is. It's, I could translate that into millimeters for you guys or centimeters or whatever you want. It's that close. And when a guy like Anderson Silva at the age, I think he was 37, right? When he lost to Weidman.
Yep.
At that age, what starts to happen is this. And Jay, finally, you're at that age where you start to realize this stuff that I've done for 10 fucking years, and it's true. It's like one of those carnival games where you have a spinner, right? And it's got, say, 31 spaces on it. And you spin the wheel. And, at age 28, there's one thing on the wheel that if it comes up on that, you're going to be a step slow that day. Or maybe none. Maybe there's none when you're 28 or you're in your prime. Well, you start to get past 35, and there's, 5 or 6 of those days on the wheel where you're just going to wake up one day and you're just not going to be what you were the day before. The next day you might be back to it. The day after you might be back to it. But that particular day, just for whatever reason, father time, mother time, if we want to be politically correct here, is going to get you robbed of that 1 millimeter or that 1 centimeter or that 1 inch that you need to get out of the way. And to me, I give myself a Kimura patting myself on the back because I said it before the fight. And at Jay, as you know, I predicted that one. But I think that's what happened in that fight, and that's sort of precisely the reason I don't think it's going to happen in this fight because Adesanya is not at that point in his career at all. He's very, very squarely in the prime of his career. He's age 31. He's got some kickboxing mileage on him, but not really that much. He doesn't have a ton of MMA mileage on him either. He hasn't taken losses, and he hasn't even been pounded much.
No,
he's always really exciting. all his early MMA fights are all knockouts, right?
Mm-hmm.
He very rarely has gone to he's got 5 decisions, right? In 19 fights in MMA. I mean, that's not a lot. And even against a guy like Yoel Romero, who's a grinder killer kind of guy. I mean, he looked like he could have fought 5 more rounds after the end of that fight.
Yeah, Yoel, Gastelum, Brad Tavares are the 3 in the UFC, I'm pretty sure.
Yeah.
Because he finished Whitaker, Brunson. I forget who else he fought in the UFC. But
he had a split decision against Marvin Vettori, believe it or not.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Huh.
Again, maybe, well, I don't know. Maybe he was off that night. Although he was like 28 probably at that point. It's already a few years ago. So 29, 28, whatever he was. So, yeah, maybe Marvin Vettori had some kind of curveball for him. That's also like, the only time he didn't get like performance of the night. I mean, dude, the guy's great. He's already an all-time great. Are you kidding me? And he's right dead smack in the middle of his prime. I think I might have to plop down some cash on this, Jay. You're talking me. You're making me talk myself into it. I think this guy's like,
Hey, you passed on Holly Holm Ronda Rousey, and look what happened.
Whatever.
If you're feeling really, really, really brave, you could put some money down on Diego, who's a plus 500 underdog.
I not bet him with your money.
And Jake Matthews is a minus 700 favorite.
Yeah,
That's fucking nuts.
No reason to even like touch that fight with those odds.
Nope.
But,
no.
I mean, unless you somehow thought Diego Sanchez had a was going to pull a rabbit out of his ass, but.
All right, before we get out of here, what's going on over at Diamond Diehards? What are you guys doing for baseball? How's the season went? Because assuming all sports have been affected by this COVID bullshit.
Okay, so first of all, I think that last segment must have been good because usually if I'm talking crazy, Amy jumps in and gets me off the ledge. So I feel like I have a bit of sanity going there. Either that or she fell asleep.
Either one's possible. She was probably taking the dogs out. Baking cookies and taking dogs out.
Why you gotta bust me out like that?
I don't think he is. I think he's kind of complimenting you.
That's for life. And seeing the geese.
Amy's Treats major plug.
Oh,
yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so here's the thing about baseball, right? The one thing I really haven't looked at is like the TV ratings and how they're going as much. I've been sort of surprised that, kind of, how do I call it? Like awakening out of the pandemic. I don't want to say we're out of the pandemic, right? Because we're not, but in terms of games actually being played in, arenas and on fields and, even in high schools and locally and, like from little kids up to professional athletes, like people are playing, right? It's very controlled, but it's actually happening. So the interesting thing to me has been how like basketball ratings have been complete shit. Hockey ratings have actually been okay. The NFL was down and has been down. And there's a lot of pundits that are really trying to poke holes in it. And, everybody's got their, everybody's a fucking expert on social justice and what it means to like the TV ratings and who's not watching because of what. I mean, come on, it's all bullshit. You don't know what people are doing or why maybe they just want to get outside and they don't feel like watching something, right? Or maybe they are protesting in their own way by not watching, but you don't really know, right? The bottom line is just that less people happen to be watching it. But with baseball, I don't hear anybody talking about the ratings one way or another. But what I have seen is, from doing Diamond Diehards, a podcast that I started in March, pretty much just as the pandemic was starting, and ahead of me getting COVID myself and being totally fine, by the way. And thanks for all the well wishes to anybody listening who passed them along. I mean, I basically had very light symptoms for about 36 hours and then I was like perfectly fine, but I stayed in my bedroom quarantined for 2 solid weeks, literally, except for the times I went out on the roof to get air. I'd started the podcast before that, anticipating like, okay, there's going to be a delayed baseball season here. And there's a company called Stratomatic that does, like replays. It's a, probability game that I've played for, a long time. It's really great. And they were doing this simulation of the season while the season was not going to go on. So they were simulating what was going to happen in the season and playing games like that were on the major league slate in simulation day by day. So I was like, you know what? I'm just going to start a podcast and I'm just going to pretend those are like real games and I'm going to talk about it like they were real to get some listeners and just to kind of get the flow and figure out what I was going to do with it. But the bottom line is, games eventually started up. And, somebody forgot that there's a mute button. Games eventually started up. And I found myself watching a lot more baseball, a lot more intently than I had for years. And I've been loving it. There has been something that's been going on every night. You're finding something interesting every night. I got the MLB package, so anytime I want to pop up a game on my computer or on the Apple TV or whatever, I see somebody's throwing a no-hitter. I put it on. I start live tweeting it. It's great. And it's been very, very exciting. They just are starting the final week of 60-game abbreviated season this week. And the American League is pretty much decided about the 8 playoff teams that'll be there. It's not certain who's going to play who. I know if Jay and Kirill, if you guys have a lot of listeners from the GTA, the Blue Jays are in there. They're almost certain to get in. It's not completely a done deal, but, they've played their whole season with home games in Buffalo. So, not that you would have been able to go to the Sky Dome or Rogers Center or whatever the fuck you call it now. It's the fucking Sky Dome, right? So you're wouldn't be able to go there. Anyway, but, they'll play the first round of these playoffs starting next week in the home stadium of the higher seed. And after that, the remaining teams will go to 2 separate bubbles. The American League will go to Southern California and play in Los Angeles and San Diego, and the National League will play in Arlington, Texas, and Houston. And what it's done, in terms of like the podcast and me doing it I'm a great baseball fan to begin with, meaning it's right up there for what I love. But this is really, actually, I think it's been a phenomenal year for it. The podcast has been doing pretty well. We go on, we've started doing it on Facebook Live, something that now I'm like, wow, I should probably do this for Rear Naked Joke Radio too. That's engaged a lot of people. And, I think the baseball has just been absolutely great. And I think the people that have followed it have been greatly rewarded. And we'll see how it is in the playoffs. Unlike hockey and basketball, you're going to have the playoffs the exact time that you would have had them anyway. Whereas, they're playing the Stanley Cup, the second game of the Stanley Cup Finals yesterday, and today would have been the day where teams were starting to play their preseason games for the 2021 season, right? And basketball is going to be playing the NBA Finals. They're in the semifinals now. They're going to be playing the finals during the time that, training camps would just be finishing. So, there'll be delays and we won't have those winter sports for a couple of months before they start up again. But, baseball is, they're right on schedule now. And it's been very, very exciting. And, I think it was a good decision for me to start it when I did, except for the fact that, like, I look at myself, I'm like, I should have started this like 10 years ago, but I didn't. So suck it.
So, on that note, be sure to check Joe out and your co-host names again. What are the names?
Jeff the Dog Healy.
Yeah, and
he's one of my college buddies. Jerry Milani comes on with us sometime. Of course, you know that name.
Yeah.
Jay.
Yeah.
From he's anytime I'm doing something involving a podcast, he's always behind it somehow or another. He's like my igniter of no good. He's always behind there. Yeah, but it's too bad you don't know anything about baseball. Otherwise, I'd have you on.
I'd come on and fake it. I'll talk about Otis Nixon.
Oh yeah, we could do a whole thing on Otis Nixon. We love him. Amy was a big Otis Nixon fan. Oh,
fucking huge. She still has posters up in her living room.
So so here's your. So I'm totally rubbing this in on you right now, Jay, because I know you want to end the show right there, and you had a perfect segue to do it, but now you left the door open, so I'm gonna just throw something in your words and talk about Otis Nixon. So Otis Nixon was this like skinny, switch hitting, like good fielder who couldn't throw, and he was really fast. And all he could do is like sometimes he would walk or he could bunt for a hit, and he was a fast base runner, so he could steal. Now, the guy was probably like 31 years old when the Braves were making their first run in the beginning of the 90s, and I don't know, maybe he even played on the Blue Jays. He played on like 100 teams. But this guy was like 30, and he looked like he was like 59. He looked so old. You'd be like, how is this guy so? This guy's got to be like 60, right? Like you just. Yeah. So for your people out there, if they've managed to not fall asleep through this, go after you're done checking out King KOTD Grand Prix series. Go just Google Otis Nixon, OTIS Nixon, and the word old after it, and then images, and you'll just see. You'll be like, oh my God, wait. What this guy? How old was this guy when he was born? Oh, shit. Yeah, but everybody will tell you. Like anybody who knows who Otis Nixon is, well, was he on the Jays that won the World Series too?
No, God no.
How you got that? Or he was against.
He was on the Expos.
Oh, he was an Expo too. Yeah. That's right. He was in everything. He was everywhere. He was probably on the Indians too. I think he was on the, and I could look him up, but I know we're not, I'll do something on Diehards with him, with Jeff the Dog Healy.
There you go. So if anyone wants to hear more of Otis Nixon and his old ass, old grandfather in the face looking ass, fucking, you can go here, Diamond Diehards on iTunes, Spotify, everywhere you get your podcast from. Make sure you check out The Building Downtown. Check it on YouTube, Spotify, same shit. Everywhere you get your podcast from. For Amy, Joe, Krill, I'm Jay Kelly. We out. Peace.
Building downtown. Building downtown. Building downtown.